Wesker was a colossal imbecile, a fool who tried to destroy the world.
So this year, Capcom held their annual Captivate event in Italy, Rome this year, and they had a lot to talk about their biggest game coming up. First of all, the release date for the game has been pushed up. It's not going to be November anymore, as was previously stated. It's going to be in October, a whole month earlier. And it was definitely something that everyone in the audience was talking about, but from what the producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi was saying, they were really excited about seeing everyone excited for the game, and they basically negotiated with the rest of the development team, and they're trying to get the game out sooner than expected. It's a little worrisome, but what it turns out is that everyone in Capcom is all hands on deck. Not only do they have 150 people working within Capcom full-time on the project, but they also have 600 staffers worldwide, just all hands on deck for Resident Evil 6. So you can tell that they've really devoted a lot of time and effort into this game, and it definitely shows. From the hour-long presentation that I checked out at Captivate, they've revealed a few details on the characters, a few details on how the control scheme is going to work out, and most of all, the monsters that are going to be in the game. So with that said, let's get started.
Another bioterrorism attack. The BSAA confirmed it was the same one used in Eastern Europe 6 months ago, called the C virus.
First things first, the executive producer, Hiroyuki Kobayashi, said that it's not just about survival horror anymore. And that might set off a few alarms out there, but what he actually means by that is that's not the only thing they're focusing on here with Resident Evil 6. What they want to do is bring back the classic feel of older games while still bringing back the action-paced trimmings that you've come to expect from games like 4 and 5. So what they've done is take the three aspects of Resident Evil and basically turn them into their own standalone campaigns. You've got Leon Kennedy, who represents more of the classic Resident Evil. You've got a lot of the measured pacing and scares and just that classic feel of being alone and trying to survive in this crazy, scary, oppressive environment. So you've got that. And then you have Chris Redfield's story, which takes on more of an action-oriented pace, which is what you've come to expect from something like 5. And then you've got the new guy, Jake Mueller, who is an all-new character. And from his story, it sounds like they're going to try something a little bit of a mix. How the director, Eiichiro Sasaki, described it was that you're going to feel the suspense of always being on the run, being chased by a relentless pursuer. So while that's still a bit of a mystery, I definitely look forward to seeing what that means in the future.
Which makes you heir to a very special blood type.
So let's round back to Leon. His story takes place in Tall Oaks, which is this fictional American town. And what he's doing there is the President of the United States is dropping by the local university to give a speech about his stance against bioterrorism. As it turns out, there's a bioterrorist group in that very city. Nice coincidence, right? So while he's giving that speech, there's this whole attack that ends up infecting the entire town. And this is basically recreating the scenario behind Raccoon City, something that Leon is definitely very familiar with. So what we saw from the demo is basically takes place right after the debut trailer where you see Leon shooting the president. From there, you get introduced to this agent called Helena Harper. So it's there in Tall Oaks that Leon meets up with Helena Harper, who is the White House agent. Together, they get implicated with the murder of the president that Leon was framed for, and now they're on the run, trying to survive, basically trying to get out of Tall Oaks and alert the masses at large. And what's cool is that right from the get-go, it's clear that Leon's take on Resident Evil is very much the classic Resident Evil that people were wanting, that maybe they didn't get in 5. So after exiting the office, complete darkness. You've got this spooky mansion-looking area, which is the main banquet hall of the university. And the power went out. How convenient. You've got a lot of thunderstorms. You've got spooky antique furniture. They're basically a lot of mood-setting pieces that kind of evoke that classic Resident Evil flair. What's great is that the game didn't really force its hand at pushing action in your face. It was very satisfied in keeping this steady amount of tension just flowing throughout. And actually one of the big plot points that you encounter during Leon's initial chapter is you find this a professor or some kind of staff member who works at the university, and he's looking for his daughter. And right from the get-go, it's clear that he's sick. He starts coughing a lot, and it's really evident that this guy is not well, right? So Leon, being the good guy he is, decides to help him out and try and find his daughter who has gone missing in the midst of the whole mess. It's cool here because it's not just your typical escort mission. The game takes the opportunity to kind of weave this really scary atmosphere around you. Not only are you traversing through this university with all its spooky corridors and, you know, the cool little sound cues and music cues that really set the mood, you also have the constant threat of this guy who's obviously sick next to you, just trailing around. You may not always see him all the time, but you can definitely hear him. That telltale cough, which lets you know that, oh, this guy might turn into a zombie at any time. After a bit of wandering, you eventually meet up with the daughter, who is just as sick, if not more sick than the guy himself. So somehow all four of you manage to get to the emergency elevator and are pretty much on the way out. But along the way, it gets really quiet and the lights dim. And suddenly you're thrown into this basically closed encounter against a zombie in that elevator, which really introduces the first huge shock of the game, where the first moment where you feel like your life is at stake. And from there, it only gets worse for Leon and Helena. As soon as the doors open, it's total zombie town, and you can tell that everyone's definitely been infected by the C virus, which is what they call it in the game. So that's Leon's story, and primarily what they showed off in terms of gameplay for Captivate. But apart from that, Capcom also briefly went into the separate stories of Chris and Jake. So with Chris, you're going to experience something close to what you've played in Resident Evil 5. It's very action-oriented, very much in the vein of the blockbuster style kind of action that they've set pace with the series lately. And his story takes place in China. And apparently he encounters this life-changing event 6 months prior to the events of the game, which changes his outlook on life and fighting bioterrorism around the world.
HQ to Alpha Team. No change to your mission. Suppress the bioterror outbreak while proceeding to point Ace of Spades.
And then last but not least, we have Jake, who is the new character to the Resident Evil franchise. Jake, who was this mysterious mercenary that they introduced in the debut trailer, was actually just confirmed by Capcom to be none other than Wesker's son, his biological son. Apparently Wesker had a child with an unknown woman, and Jake is going to be basically the new Youngblood of the crew. He's working odd jobs as a mercenary in an Eastern European country, basically getting whatever money he can to send back home to his mom. And it's there that he encounters a familiar face to the franchise, who turns out to be none other than Sherry Birkin. She approaches him and tells him that only he has the power to save the world. And it turns out that the special blood type bequeathed to him by being Wesker's son gives him certain immunities to viruses out there. And it's an important plot point that plays out later in the story. One thing that the director Eiichiro Sasaki pointed out was he thought that it would be interesting to kind of introduce these two characters who were very much entrenched in a history of viruses. Looking at Jake, of course, who is the son of Wesker, meeting Sherry, who some may remember was infected by her own dad with a certain strain of virus. He felt that these two characters meeting one another would fulfill a certain dramatic twist. And according to Sasaki, they apparently have both very opposing personalities, so that will play into some dramatic tension between them too.
Yeah, this is Raccoon City all over again.